Hello, Abnormal Family. Got another encounter for you. I hope you all enjoy this one as I enjoy reading them to you. And, well, let's get on with it. I'm a 21-year-old girl from a small town in Sweden, and some years ago, me and my two guy friends from school decided to go into the forest to camp out for a night. This is not the first time we've done this, but we had never been to this spot before. Let's call my friends Phil and Ned. We had chosen to go on the camping trip on a warm and sunny Friday in July. We got our parents to drop us out at the entrance to the forest trail that we were going on. Ned had chosen this spot because he had heard his grandfather speak of it before he died not too long ago. There was apparently going to be a camping fun night with a fireplace, and behind that was going to be a small lake. We walked for about 1 hour on an old gravel road surrounded by thick forest. It took much longer to get to where we anticipated, and like a typical girl, I had, of course, overpacked. Finally, we got to the place that we were headed. To my surprise, it was really nicely kept. It was a small place with trees, walls, roof, and a wooden floor. This was a pretty neat little shack. We walked straight down to a small lake and jumped in to cool off for the long, sweaty walk. Phil started a fire, and me and Ned carved sticks to grill some hot dogs on. We stayed by the fire all evening and passed around a bottle of wine that we had, that Phil had taken from his parents, and we talked about life. The sun started to go down by this time. The talking stopped abruptly by a twig snapping behind me. I froze, not wanting to look behind me. Ned got up and got closer to where the sound had come from. He laughed nervously. "Maybe we got a thirsty rabbit on our hands," he said, as he took a sip from the vodka bottle that he had brought. He sat back down, and we started to relax again, trying to laugh it off. We continued our talking a bit longer until we got tired. Ned went to go to relieve himself behind some trees by the shack, and as I stood up from my place to go to my sleeping bag, I heard someone sobbing. Petrified, I turned around to look where the sobbing came from, and there was another sob. I screamed and ran over to Phil. He was kind of scared by my reaction because he apparently had not heard the sobs. Ned came out from the side of the shack and asked what was happening. I explained myself to them the best I could, and they got silent to listen to the forest sounds. The sobbing did not come again, but now we realized that there was no sounds at all coming from the forest. It was too silent. I was close to freaking out by the boys, and they laughed at me to explain it away as my imagination. We did not want to stay awake anymore, so we threw the last bit of firewood on the fire, and got in our sleeping bags. It was cold on the old shack floor, and we stayed as close to each other as possible. We all had a hard time falling asleep, but eventually we drifted off. I woke up to Phil whispering in my ear, "Wake up. There is a girl by the fire." I was too tired to understand what he was saying, but looked over by the fire anyway. It was dark, and the fire had almost burned down to ash, and gave this small reddish glow. But there was a little girl silhouette illuminated by the glow past the fireplace, just by the spot I had previously set. I looked at Ned, but he was fast asleep, and then I looked at Phil, but he just stared at the girl. She had her head in her hands, and had a brown, dirty dress on, long, messy blonde hair, and looked to be no more than 3 years old. We lay there for what felt like forever before Phil stood up and looked at me to do the same. I followed his lead, and I did as he did. Now Ned woke up and was just about to say something when Phil sighed. He signed for him to be silent, and he pointed to where the little girl stood. The silence was again broken by sobbing coming from the girl, but she had not moved. A cold chill went through me as I realized that it was the same sounds I had heard before. I wanted to believe that the little girl was only lost. I just knew in my bones that this was not normal. A little girl lost in the woods? Phil walked closer to the girl slowly, and he tried to talk to her. He said, "Hi, my name is Phil. Don't be scared. Are you lost?" The little girl stopped the sobbing and waited for her to respond as she just stood there. She lifted her head up slowly. I expected a horrible, deformed-looking face to greet us, but her face was beautiful until she opened her mouth twice the size it should have been and screamed a horrific scream. I fell backwards into the shack and hit my head on the hard, damp floor, and I was stunned by the pain and got a splitting headache immediately. When I regained some of my senses, I started to really start freaking out, but the little girl had disappeared. "What the hell was that?" I screamed. The boys did not answer me, but was already stuffing their things into their backpacks as fast as they could and screaming that we had to get out of here. I tried to do the same, but because of the intense pain in my head, I was not as fast as them, so I had to leave some stuff behind. But I did not care, as long as we get out of there fast. We started running down the old gravel road that led out to the parking lot. It was almost pitch dark on the small road, only lighted by the faint light coming from our phones. Ned tripped on something and fell to the ground. We stopped to help him up to his feet again, but he had also hurt his head. So now here we are, running to the car as fast as we can. We hear little feet running behind us in the mud. You can hear the toes, the feet, slapping into the mud. We're hurrying even faster with our cell phone lights only giving us a little bit of light. As we make it to the car and we get away, we finally feel at ease. That is, until the next night. I had got up and had to go to the restroom. Inside of our front room, we have a large fireplace. It has a glass front, and the glow from the fire usually lights the front room quite comfortably. As I was going to the bathroom, I looked over to the fireplace, and I saw the same little girl standing in front of it. She was waving at me like I was in a car driving away, but I was standing in my own home, and she was smiling and waving. And then she done the most horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. She dropped to her hands and knees, ran underneath my coffee table, emerging from the other side, jumping onto my couch and onto the back of it, and then leaped toward me, landing on the steps. I ran for my bedroom. I could hear her running behind me, her claws or fingernails or whatever they was scraping on the floor and her sliding. I slammed my door, locked it. She starts rattling my doorknob. I yell for my mom, my dad. And then it happened. The door opened. It was my dad. He asked me, "What are you doing?" First thing I said, "How did you get in? I locked the door." He said, "Honey, the door's not locked. You don't even have a lock on your door." And when I looked, sure enough, there was no lock on my door, but I could have swore there was a lock there. Then I woke up in my bed. I have no idea how I got there. I was lying there, and I thought it had all possibly had just been a dream. So I got up and I walked to my door, but there's a lock. How is there a lock when there wasn't just a lock? I unlocked it, and I walked out into the hallway. And as I walked down the hallway, I looked into my mom and dad's room, and they were comfortably asleep. So I got a drink and headed back to bed thinking this had to be a dream. But there it was, laying in the middle of my bed. The little girl's, yes, you guessed it, the little girl's hair tie was laying in the middle of my bed. I have not seen her again to this day, but I still have her hair tie. Her hair tie is laying on my dresser. I hope she never decides to come back and get it. Well, I would suggest getting rid of that. I wouldn't keep that around if I did have it, because it could be something attached to that hair tie. I would rebuke everything in my house. I would say that you had something that hitchhiked home with you. As far as you waking up in the bed, I don't know how you would have ended up there. A lot of people talk about time loss, so I don't know if you suffered that. I've never experienced that before, but I have heard a lot of people talk about that, so I believe it is possible. So maybe that's something that might have happened. I'm not real sure. Maybe some of our listeners will have a better answer for you on this because I don't know a lot about this, but I have heard a little bit about it. So hopefully they'll be able to give you some insight. So I would watch the comments because we do have a lot of smart people that watch this, and I'm sure they will offer you up some really good theories, opinions, and advice. So thank you very much for listening, guys. Until next time, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner. And for sure, don't keep haunted items in your house waiting for it to come back and get them.